So the weekend's finished, and we are now into one of the recaps of the tournament just happened. It is a nomadic clash, which of course is a mega random death match between two players. 1v1, a lot of the top players appeared here. A lot of them were aping around literally, as for some reason they decided to go full Anon and decide they all needed to be called a baboon, as you're about to see. So let's hop in with the first one. I've checked and identified this baboon in particular in the blue is, of course, our tricky trader, our little raccoon. It's the one and only Recon. And, of course, up against him on the other side, well, he isn't looking to be a primate with a big ass. He's just going to try to be a human with a big ass. It is, of course, Avali, a familiar face, someone who creates a lot of maps, grinds on the ladders consistently. I think he's in the top 100 at the time of recording. See how he can do in this tournament. For those unaware of what the Nomadic Clash is, it is a $1,000 tournament that was hosted by Mr. Merlin across the weekend. We're checking in from the future into the past. You can figure out the dynamics of that to see how people perform, because I don't think every game was covered. And of course, a lot of people probably weren't even aware this was going on. In fact, it was brought to my attention midway through the week before it actually went live. So it's quite a surprise for me. Very nice one as well. And that ring-a-ding-a-ding, as you can see, is to do with Treaty. So when the games start in this format of MegaRandom Nomad, there's, I think it's a 3-minute peace treaty where you can't attack other players. That's to prevent people from doing really cheesy outpost rushes where they just end the game instantly. Well, they wouldn't try that in this situation. You see they're quite well split. In terms of villager count, I believe the count was meant to be, I want to say 3 is usually the format, but I think we actually started with maybe 6 here, if not 8. Interesting opening, actually. The HRA play, I didn't check if they actually got the Prelate on spawn. I assume they don't still in MegaRandom. I don't think that ever got adjusted. But for those who haven't ever played it before, the way MegaRandom will work, and you see by the fog of wars here, is your villages start split across the map. So you got to kind of find a way to bring them together and set up a base. Some people like to actually just leave their villages out doing some business. That usually happens a lot more in the MegaRandom Nomad free-for-alls where you have 8 players. So let's say you're in an 8-player map. You know, if one of my villages spawns on the right side of the map, the other's on the left, I'm probably just going to leave him there gathering wood or whatever crap I can find, because the idle time of running him across the map would be much higher than the cost of building a structure to gather from. Let's see how this is going to proceed, because I'm just looking at the lay of lands, and there's a lot of fish accessible for both players. One of them being Roost, one of them being HRE. These are both civs that can use the water quite well. Unfortunately, from a HRE perspective, the way you want to use water is to then pivot into a strong naval force to beat your opponent. But because of the split ponds, that's not exactly feasible here. I wonder, will Recon try for a full aggro play against the HRE? He very much could. Like, he controls a significant part of the map that's important here. I don't know if you guys have noticed this with the relics, but this is incredibly biased towards the Roost player. You've got one, maybe that 2, parked right next to your base, and the others are easily accessible. One of them essentially defended by Boomba. Might be a difficult start in that regard for Avali, especially if this is going to be your standardized Castle Age rush that we see so frequently out of these Prelate pushing bad boys. Like that he actually set up the dock here as well, by the way. Remember, like, a very crucial play when you're playing these type of maps, just because the water is split doesn't mean your opponent won't try to sneak a dock on your side. Gets one dock up, gets, you know, 1 or 2 ships out, all of a sudden your fishing eco flatlines, and that can easily decide the game. It's nice to see Avali competing a little again. Felt like I hadn't really been able to catch many of his games. I'm not really sure if he's been that active across the holidays. He's definitely a familiar face in the scene. He's been grinding since AoE 4 came out, more or less, and along the way, even though he hasn't been able to find big competitive success, in a way, he has been in those finals in spirit. Because sometimes his maps appear deep in tournament runs, even featuring in grand finals. So, really big shout out to him. Basin would be the big one that comes to mind that he created. Was it Basin? I always get Basin and something else mixed up. I'm pretty sure it was Basin, though. It's the one with Stealth Forest on the side. It is. I'd like to do a humble brag and say I gave the feedback for the Stealth Forest to be added. I'm very proud of myself for that. If anyone does have maps that they want a little bit of feedback on, I'm not saying I'm a genius map creator, but I'm always available to give feedback. I'm always interested in seeing new maps in the esports scene. Just kind of beats the tedium of watching Lipany or Dry Arabia for the millionth time. That's something that a lot of people find very appealing about MegaRandom Nomad, by the way. Like, you have to remember, as you may have guessed from the name, it's all random. There are some fixed elements. The fact that, for example, deer and ball count is tied to player count, relics as well. But in terms of where the resources can be, the lay of the lands, Bob's your uncle. You never know how it's going to end up. You could end up spawning and finding yourself with 2 villagers trapped in a tree line, unable to move. We've had that before with players. It's actually brilliant. They make the new little home in the mountains where no one else can access for a long time. In this type of situation, survivor's not good enough. And these 1v1s, there can be only one victor, clearly. Doesn't matter about getting 2nd through 5th. Which, that's one of the annoying things we did notice, right, from Outback Octagon is some people would ratatouille their way into the top 3, even though they should have went out in 8th. Something at least you don't have to worry about when you move away from free-for-alls. Something that's always been an issue with the free-for-all format, to be honest. And there's never been a great proposal on how to fix it. I mean, some people made the suggestion that everyone's name should be anoned out, but I don't think that would even resolve the issue. I don't mind the idea of regularly anonymizing, whatever the word is, people's names anyway, simply because it means you have to react to the gameplay instead of going and predictably saying, yeah, this is what the person does. Interesting move out here with the villagers to try and stop the dog coming. I don't know if Avali's not going to be quick enough for this play. There's no way these villagers kill him quick enough. Just look at the health left on the dock. So Recon probably going to lose the villager afterwards, and he realizes it. Don't panic, just commit. I love that small step. Did you see that? Recon, he shifts back, so only 2 villagers potentially are pummeling him, but it's worse than it even appears for Avali because he ends up finding 2 of his villagers aggroing to the left side of the dock, which allows Recon to walk away without losing the villager to get this up. Now he's going straight into the naval arrow slit. An interesting choice here. Would have preferred to have seen a first boat coming out just to keep the villagers at bay, right? Because this is 3 villagers torching down. Maybe from Recon's perspective, it's kind of a whatever anyway. Because now you have this situation where 3 villagers of the HRE are not working. That's really bad. I mean, if you want to map it out for what it is, because you get a 40% increased gathering rate, it's like having 4.2 villagers missing from your economy. Looks like maybe the arrow slits play will pay off straight away. The Hulk being targeted. And gradually, the Hulk is going to lose out here. Unless he pulls more to heal the Springald ship, 1 fishing boat's not going to cut it. Especially now that we're going to see an archer ship being pushed out. So he is prioritizing going for those villagers. He brings in a fresh village to try and repair, which buys him more time to try and get the ship out. A tough one, but Recon, look at this. Avali strikes back in Recon's pond now. However, Recon, fully prepped with the Springald and the archer ship, should be able to buff this off. Meanwhile, the dock. Oh, no, he's housed. No, not like this. Yeah, look at the panic rush. He needs to get it out before the dock goes down. Oh, that's so unfortunate. And it means he won't be able to get rid of the villagers in time before they torch the dock. Really frustrating situation for Recon here. If the villager stays alive, he can come back in and repair. But not only does he lose the villi, he gets forced to now double down. 3 villagers in the pull. Maybe an opportunity for the Springald ship to snipe 1 or 2 out. Of course, this is the frustration, right? Like, archer ships can be dodged, but Springald ship shots cannot. They can very easily tag you. And this is a heavy investment coming out from Recon. He'll barely get the dock out of fire range here, and it's going to cost him 4 villagers to do so. Fails to even get it out. Demo ship at least does come out to play. It's at least a potential upside for him, as he'll be able to detonate on the Springald ship. But now, what do we do? Come on. Get him going, boys. This is the 5th and 6th villager. I mean, he had 1 at the beginning that survived, but so far, he's burnt 4 villagers on this dock. It needs to get its payday, and Demo ship is going to deny it, so new dock needed. He has at least pushed Avali off of his own waterside, right? Oh, the Demo ship play? Oh, the Demo ship play! The boom! Recon! No! That has to be it, right? Like, there's no way you claw back from that. How many villages was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't keep count. Oh my god. There is no... if Recon somehow comes back into this from this deficit, I am going to be mind blown. Folks, I cannot emphasize how bad that really is. Yes, you're Roost playing on a fishing map, but your fishing's being annihilated by this dock drop from Avali. On top of that, you just lost 10 villages. You lost another 4, maybe even more than that, fighting into your opponent's water area. And now he's rushing Burgrave. This game could easily be over in the next 2 minutes. Wow. The timing for Avali there was perfect. He didn't expect the villager pull initially, by the way. Check his vision. This is what he sees. He sees them rushing in here, then pivots back. It could not have went better for Avali. Recon, relentless though, still refuses to fully give up, but with a new Springle ship in his home lake, he might not have much of a say anymore. The fishing looks a bit too strong, and I've got a feeling as soon as Recon sees that tech up come out, he might just call the game. Especially when you're doing this, right? You're going into Knights. That's a slow amassment. If you've done this early on, it makes sense. But now it's a desperation play. 35 seconds per night with a crippled food eco, a crippled land eco. No eco to speak of when you compare it to the HREs. Yikes. What a way to open up. One unexpected way as well. You know, coming in this, if I look to these 2 players on paper, Recon should be taken every day of the week. But instead, Avali slaps me around the cheeks and says, hush your gum, sir. I'm dubbing 1 here. He'll open the series with a win. Which means we get game number 2. Of course, remember, MegaRandom Nomad free-for-all. Free-for-all? I'm so used to saying free-for-all. MegaRandom Nomad. Your villages start out separated. You do get 8, so we can confirm that. It's 8 you're starting with, which I think is inflated over the normal number, so quicker start on the opening. And there is a peacetime in place. Your villages are randomly dispersed across the battlefield, and you have 3 minutes to move about freely without having to worry about someone slapping you around the teeth. After those 3 minutes, however, you're in for quite the blood sport. And let me just update the scores, because for those who just tuned in, we did already have 1 game. It was a fast one, and the victor was Avali. Came out ahead, and this time he's looking to close out quickly in this series by whipping out the Ottomans. Not a bad choice, a respectable one, but maybe one he's going to struggle to easily breach on the other side because his opponent is going to be the English. And I think the English can fare reasonably well against the Ottos because usually the way you play it, right, so if you think about Ottoman plans, like what they usually want to do, if they're playing prolonged feudal, it's almost always going to be the archable mass. If they play into that archable mass, it's very difficult to breach an English base because A, their static point defenses, B, their attack speed aura, and then C, the substantially larger range of the Lombos versus the archers. So instead, Avali would probably be better suited going for kind of a rush-up play into Castle Age, even more so when you consider the map layout. Even though he got the wall down on the river, this river's going to condense his options unless he invests in transpo ships, which means that an English player, especially if they just play a little bit towards the east of their base, will cover the area you'd assault from. Your only alternative is to then run all the way upriver to cross at the second stray. So we'll see which way Avali wants to swing. There are some maps where going for the mass archable can work quite well against the English. It depends on their own opening. But I'd say usually the safer bet is just play for that Castle Age, which allows you to unlock one of your most potent power spike points against the English before they fully come online. Me too, 10K Coach. I'm looking forward to a year brimmed full of esports. You know, maybe sprinkle some AoE4 in there. I'd love to sprinkle some Dotska back in there. Maybe sprinkle a little bit more Apex and see where else we go. Maybe some Warzone quality. We'll see. For now, we're looking at the AO not free. It's the full. I was always looking for the opportunity to rhyme there, but it just didn't exist. We cast the wrong Age of Empires. But dog play early on by Avali. Beneficial here. Recon, of course, can just catch up on land eco. Being the English going into farms is incredibly efficient for you. Probably his best option as well, unless he wants to gamble on the deer. Unlikely to occur here, though. If this was a non-aggro type Civ, which the Ottomans most definitely are, you might see Recon play out of his base onto this source here. But considering that he is up against the English, up against the Ottomans rather, he's going to be concerned about that early Archibald we talked about, or even just Sapahi turning up if he leaves his base. Looks like there was a play on the docks. I didn't notice this at first because the blue, until we start seeing units coming out. So Recon is fishing. Surprisingly so. The worst part for him is he actually just revealed it when he dragged all the way down. He did at least get vital scouting info, but now Avali knows that his opponent is on the waterfront as well. Question is whether he can do anything about it. Do you even want to try? I'll tell you who's going to try, though. Recon. And he gets to do this because Avali is close to his base. Meanwhile, his fishing expansion is really far out, so Avali couldn't mirror the same move, or at least not at the same time. In fact, it looks like Avali is now trying to do this, but I'm worried the timing could end up being slightly off. In fact, the other part that's even worse is there's a villager up here, right? So if you try to drop an outpost in range, this villager will just attack you. So, okay, that's much better. I prefer that play. So going for a second dock means that he can just win on outright naval, and it allows him to have a backup fishing location away from the outpost. I'm so glad that Avali didn't try to go for that dock block. You just can't. If there's one civ in the game you can't do it against, it's the English. Second civ, probably the Delhi, because remember, if you try to block their fishing, the Delhi will turn with their fishing boats that do 7 damage each. Now the question is Recon going to build another? He is. He's going to build another outpost. He might even go for a dock play here, actually. Just play a dock right on top of where he moves his fishing, and he's going to feel really screwed. Love the immediate garrison in the meantime. We'll be able to snipe out one of the fishing boats. Something that's easy to forget is, you know, although this damage was nerfed, there's still a little bit of bonus damage for outposts onto these ships. And on top of that, when you immediately garrison with 5 villages, these bad boys aren't going to last long. Man, Avali's game is being made really uncomfortable here. And Recon, oh, he's going to block it. Leave the sheep there. Leave the sheep, bring the villagers. I love the fact that he peels off 3 and leaves 2 constructing. So he realizes that it's not worth the extra 75% build speed from 3 villages versus sniping one out on the other side. Just a really good heads-up play. And it looks like actually Avali might have got the wall up. That is the... What? That is the fattest slab of wood I've ever seen. How did this one guy bring a slab of wood that big out here? I don't even know where to begin with that one. I think Recon... Wait. What? It looked like Recon was attacking quicker for a moment there. But I think animation cancel is more or less gone. So it's probably just the extra damage from the villagers adding up that much. Look at this. Speaking of villagers, now Avali feels comfortable to go for this play because he says, okay, Recon, you can't be in range of me with the short bows anymore. I'm not sure if that would have been entirely true. Maybe Recon hasn't fully noticed yet. He's got one villager up here that could probably snipe, and there we go. He realizes it's too late, though, so kind of unfortunate. He will at least snipe a villager for his trouble, but he will not be able to stop that outpost from going up. Gotta say, though, so far, Recon is doing a lot more damage than is being done the other way. Avali's going to now try to return the favor. You should be able to snipe a few fishing boats here. Recon has a lot of his economy in this area. That's already 1 down. And notice the patrol now. So Recon, he's just going to shift back and forth between these outposts. Try to be a nuisance at all times to Avali. It's interesting to play the English this long in Dark Age. Most of the time, you just want to move up to Feudal, and you can get this similar effect with longbows, especially on small rivers. Remember, it's why the English used to be really good on Mongolian Heights in the early game, not just the late. We know about the late. And, oh my god, have I forgotten its name? Delhi loved the map. It had a central island and a lake going for it, and I blanked it. Apologies, folks. But the whole idea is anytime you have a thin body of water, longbows are really good because they can reach in and snipe out fishing boats. They can even attack archer ships, while archer ships won't have sufficient range to return fire. Remember, it's like 7 tile range versus 4.5, 5 on average. More outposts going up in the meantime from Avali. Both of them beginning their attack up. You can see a lead for Recon. Apologies, I just noticed the UI is the wrong way around. Oh, that's going to be a nuisance for actually switching the score each time, isn't it? Yeah, just a little bit. Mainly it's a nuisance because for some reason my OBS, whenever I open a text layer, it stretches the box across like 2 screens. So, quite fun to edit. I'm trying to get a feel for who got better value out of all these plays. Like, I kind of wanted to say Recon, but then this follow-up play from Avali shut everything. It's kind of weird, actually. If Recon had just built another dock down the south side, which he now has done, and shifted all of his fishing boats, it wouldn't have been too bad, but this is the problem, right? This piece of wall. I love, by the way, how we've got an invisible piece of wall here, and I don't even know where to begin with this. But that blocked him out from moving away with the fishing. That was the problem. I love the fact that Recon tried for a play with his villagers across the other side, but it felt like it came a little bit too late. Ali was really crafty with this one. It's kind of crazy, actually. 2 maps in a row now where water has been everything, as it often is, but the way it's been everything has been very chaotic so far between these two. Wonder if anyone's going to lose 1 million villagers to a boom ship in this one. Do love the fact that Recon's keeping the villagers out here, right? Like, this is a very big benefit the English have. The villagers, they can attack back, as we've seen already. And that's an added value. The main value of keeping them out here is they're now getting 1 food a second. Because the villagers, when they gather, their gathering rate is comparative to deep water fish for fishing boats. At least when you're gathering from shoreline fish. If your villagers are gathering from deep water fish, you may want to send in a rescue boat. Last time I checked, villies don't swim too well. Just ask all my transport ships that got deleted in the past. Speaking of transport ships, even more being played out now. Oh, yes. So, honestly, I am really impressed with what Recon's doing here. I've been asking for a long time that transport ships become a more regularly used element of gameplay on naval sides, especially on maps like this. And there's a good reason. So one big up you get is for a fairly low price, right? Transport ships only 100 wood, I believe. 90 wood, if the English, even cheaper. The whole play is that transport ships will allow you to get past all these barriers you see. But also, if you're going for an early aggro play with your villagers move at 1.12. These transport ships move at 1.62. That's the speed of a heavy knight. It's a much more efficient way of chasing targets. In fact, if you want to get micro-intensive about it and you see a villager running away from you as you fire on them, garrison in the transport ship, move upriver, ungarrison, they can never get away. It's a very effective way to block out any villager plays from your opponent in the mid-map. And it's a play that really only the English can feasibly do in the early game. I think that the transport ships are criminally underused in a lot of games around mid and late. But in the early game, the civ that should be doing it the most is the English. English and Malians. Malians for obvious reasons, and the English for this reason. The villager aggro always. And now the racks follow up. The men-at-arms are going to be spammed out. That'll be a solution to these docks. And yes, you did notice that correctly. Avali, this whole while, has been missing a villager who was stuck in the corner. He also built a Sultani trade network on a map that has no marketplace. Oh, that's the worst feeling. I mean, he's at least going to get a bit of passive gold. In fairness, you could argue he doesn't really need the food because he's got fishing. But the fishing isn't really for free right now. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he has a grand total of none. Oh, sorry, 2. He's got 2. They were humping together to make themselves look a little bit like a Dow ship. So 2 fishing boats. Honestly, feel like you would have preferred to have the Madrissa in this situation. Oh, wait. No, I'm an idiot. There is a trade post up here. Ignore me and my ramblings. It's not exactly safe, though. Like, if you're Recon and you can sneak a boat out and just park it here like a springle ship, you could probably start killing off traders as they come in. How did I not notice these trade posts? We literally glanced over it multiple times. I think it's because I checked corners. I was like, oh, corner, corner. Well, he might have trade, but he doesn't really have much else going his way right now. Now, keep in mind, Avali is the person that put the walls up on the crossings, so that is an advantage he has, right? Like, he can try to raid in with Sipahi. Problem is, the Sipahi aren't going to be as impactful as the men-at-arms spam. And because Recon is rebooting his fishing fleet, he'll be able to afford this for quite a while. In fact, it's quite funny, because at this point, Recon hasn't even upgraded them to early men-at-arms, despite the fact that, there we go, as I say, it's incredibly cost-efficient. I'm pretty sure if you talk about like damage and health increase and whatnot, it's worth getting the men-at-arms upgrade by the time you have like 3 in the field. Then when you're talking about feudal to castle age, usually like the metric is like 8 to 10 if I'm not mistaken. And then if you're going from castle age to imperial age, probably I want to say like 15 to 20. When you talk about when you should upgrade your units in Imperial Age is very different because in Imperial Age, usually pop cap is a bigger issue, so you want to upgrade immediately, right? Because you want pop cap efficient units. Whereas in the case of Feudal and Castle Age with these type of upgrades, you always have room for more pop cap. It's very rare that you talk about someone being 200 pop cap when they're in Feudal Age. Well, it's not quite 200 pop cap, but it's quite the sizable army coming out from good old Recon here. And Avali, I don't think you even want to show up for a second here, bud. He will walk away. Notice what the focus is for Recon. He's not looking to get into the base. He's looking to get into the trade. He says, if I can't do it, you can't. And of course, Recon would be focused on the trade. I mean, this guy, I don't know if you guys know, but I gave this guy a nickname several months ago. And honestly, I think it will stick. I call him the tricky trader. Because no matter what, this guy finds a way to trade when you least expect it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this game went long enough, we'd see an English player doing trade. Probably not, just because farms are just so good and you just want to spam out food units a lot of the time in late game. But it really wouldn't surprise me to see him pivot. Especially considering he has got that juicy trade post sitting right next to him. But for the time being, he has gone for the double TC play. This early aggro needs to pay off because as you're seeing, Avali is taking up on his way towards Castle Age here. Very important timing for the Ottoman player to be able to get. Just increase those passive production rates and get additional military scores bumping. Not to mention the fact now you're going to be able to passively build Mangonels, a solid solution to what the English put out at this stage in the game. But credit where credit's due, Recon hasn't really overindulged into Lombos, right? He stopped at 6. Men-at-Arms, he went pretty lofty, but they're always going to find value, right? There's plenty of docks around, outposts, whatnot, that you could target here. And speaking of those outposts, they haven't been upgraded. So if he just beelines for the outpost now and burns them down, he can start fishing on the north side again, which is going to be very important considering he went 2 TC. That will allow him to increase his timing, or rather decrease the time required, to head towards Castle by about a minute if he goes up to 6 to 8 fishing boats in this area. Definitely wants to catch up soon. Like this gap that Avali has is aligned to initially get into the Knights. It's a slow process though, so he will have time to respond. The cool thing about playing the English like this is because you have early access to men-at-arms, even if you arrive a little bit slower in a Castle Age, you already have access to Castle Age units. You just need to upgrade them, which doesn't take very long. Avali with the Drunken Trader. That'll be the last bit of trading we'll be able to do anyway. I mean, you can't even send the troops out yet, right? You haven't got enough of them. 2 Knights, men-at-arms, and a few Sipahi will lose to this many troopers. So understandably, he's just going to wait at home and accept his fate in this area for the time being. Good news when you play with the Sultani trade network is even if you get shut down on trade, you can still get a little bit of passive income, remember? As you can see, for every trader that you garrison aside, you're going to generate 28 gold a minute. Keep in mind it's limited to 6, though. Otherwise, it would be a very, very broken landmark indeed. So the trade will make its way through. Full dock access now for Recon. So this should be where he just frees up the fishing and whoopsie. I hope he notices soon. This is the corruption of Empire, I'm afraid, folks. You know, when you grow too big to manage each individual person, some people take extended coffee breaks. Seeing all of these workers on regular breaks is probably the most English thing that you can happen in a game of Age of Empires 4. Have we got that in other docks as well? I think the others are operational at least, so it's not the end of the world, but just a little bit of extra pull of food missing from his arsenal. And oh, Clash coming out. Avali's moved out, but look at this play. The boom ship being prepped. Seems like someone wants a bit of vengeance. I'm not sure it's even fully necessary here, but notice the bait back, and Avali, he's trying to leave. We'll get away, but now you just get peppered on the outro. I kind of like that from Recon. Like, you keep the demo ship instead of killing 1 unit, so now they can never come back. And the longbows can just block trade indefinitely. Make no mistake about it, folks. This is actually the better way to make this play. Because he would have been able to boom and probably kill 1 of the units. He would have been able to get close enough. But the others would have came back, killed the longbows, and then trade would have resumed. So tech up complete. Notice that it was the King's Palace as well. So Recon being pretty greedy. I do love the fact he played out into Deer as well. This is a cool thing you can do, especially when you notice your opponent is playing more defensive than aggro. And the problem that Avali has is he made himself kind of obvious, right? Like, when you go for trade, you are likely to be defensive. Because if you have to make a choice between protecting your own trade or raiding into an English base, you're going to choose defense of the trade every day of the week. For a start, it's much easier to do, and you feel like the upside is better for you. But not likely to be the case anymore. We'll see the Mangonel moving up. That was some Stormtrooper accuracy right there. Yeah, honestly, he's going to start losing this to the galley alone. Cool thing is that, remember, you still get bonus damage up against ships, so you can push these away. But notice, all attention is drawn north side still. Meanwhile, south side has been neglected, and that's going to be an area Recon looks to exploit. Night production now underway. He now has full control of the crossing. So Avali doesn't have a short route for raiding, and now is forced to double down on the north side. It's just getting worse. Setting up the keep. Like, this might seem good, right? Because Avali has now secured trade again by setting up a keep in this area. Keep in mind that he's not going to be secure in the mid-crossing, though. Which means that Recon can wrap him with a few knights and still snipe out a lot of these traders. Ay. I'm starting to get worried for Avali here. I think he's just being played. He'll now at least try to breach for the north side. I'm wondering if he suspected trade was happening in Recon's area as well. I really hope not, because if he's come up here, because that's his belief, he's going to be sorely disappointed. Discover the knights. More troops are on the way. So interestingly enough, Recon decided to defend his own lands instead of raiding inward. Just left a few lombos behind enemy lines, and my god, are they doing damage. Oh wow, this is even worse than it appears for Avali, because he committed all of his troops to the northern expansion. So now he has nothing to defend the trade on the backside. Lots of traders are going to die here, potentially villagers as well, because you just let a bunch of lombos into your base. These are foxes in the proverbial henhouse. And they'll move back and forth between villagers and traders alike. Looks like knights are finally on the way, but honestly, these lombos should get their value in exchange for their lives. Let's get a few more villages. It's much easier, by the way. Remember, traders have a lot more health than villagers, so sniping these out makes a lot more sense. I'm just going to correct that for the person who asked for the bracket. This is a tournament. I don't think we had a listing to a bracket, though, for this one. Nice switch. I love that. Recon is giving you a masterclass on transport ships. Such an underrepresented unit, and I hope people are taking this lesson forward and realizing how valuable it can be. That play just crippled the Mangonel and now allows him to defend his own lands. Because if it wasn't for that, all Avali has to do is play near to the waterfront, and the Mango will always protect him. And sure, Avali's still winning this initial clash, but now he's going to eventually be pushed out. Meanwhile, where's his second layer? Next, he's moving south side towards the base of Recon. Bold maneuver. The warrior playing into this area is you know there's going to be outposts always buffing people in the clash, even on your side. Bunch of ships are going to be a nuisance. Notice that he's actually targeting men-at-arms here. If he went for the crossbows, kills them even faster, but going for the men-at-arms at least gets rid of the torch damage, and Spiral ship as well. That Spiral ship, I mean, if it targets the Maga now, it could kill it quite fast here. See if Recon realizes that what the aggro is going towards here. It's buying a lot of time in this area, just the ships, though. Enough time that troops are going to build up again. Avali, how are we looking on the trade? Because I don't feel like it's that high, right? 12 traders. That's quite the stinger. He has at least stopped raids into his own side, but ultimately, he's been delayed on this southern denial, right? Like, he's trying to just push Recon back across to his side of the river, but the amount of time it's taking him is allowing Recon to build up a sizable force. Look at the knight count, and look at the transport ship again. Oh, man. I love the transport ship usage here. Oh, wow. Such a value play. And he's going to do it again. Back in, he says, okay, I don't need to address your main army yet. I just need to go back after the trade. Love the fact he's stripping away the outposts as well, just denying vision from the Ottomans. Ottomans that, once again, are now just going to run back to defend. Oh, man. So this is the problem for Avali. He isn't playing variants anymore. He keeps defending, right? Every time the trade comes under assault, he returns to it. Recon sniffed that out. This raccoon, he dug deep into your trash and he found all your secrets. What he found out is that Avali will do anything and everything to protect the trade. And that means that Recon doesn't actually have to realistically ever defend, right? He can just kind of feign defense. But now, with his eco being as large as it is, with triple TC, as well as fishing access, he has enough food to inflate his night count to not only buffer the trade away on the east side, but now push into the base on the west. Avali is in for a world of pain. His passive production can't keep up with this. It's problematic as well. Like, he doesn't have much of a front line to protect the crossbow mass. In fact, if you look at the crossbow count, there's almost more knights in the field than there are crossbows. And in those numbers, knights will always win. Wow, just consider this as well. Well, those longbows, I think, they just pulled 14 of the military pop cap to the backside of the map. Recon now has a clear number advantage that he can push. Knights on the backside can continue to shut down the trade. From the west, the push begins. Knights move in. That's a freebie. No protection for the Springald. Ambitious and maybe a little bit naive. Avali, he built the siege workshop on the west side of his base, which means that it's coming out on your front line. Makes a lot of sense when you have control, but he doesn't have that. So anything built out of here is just being sacrificed straight away. His only hope is that he can maybe get a shot or two out in the Maga now. Nice Recon, calm and patient. He found the villagers. He realizes what's happening here. He says, okay, Avali, for what you're building, you need to be getting food somewhere. You went Sultani Trade Network. It means you don't have a Madrissa, and that means you must be out of your base. The reads. Recon is just 2 steps ahead at this point. Soon to be free, it feels like. Mangonel's also going to be sniped out. Looks like a key drop is on the way. Recon's read on this map has been phenomenal. And remember, folks, that is always something you need to remind yourself of when an Ottoman player goes for the Sultani Trade Network. Where are they going to get food? They have to play out their map. If you go into their base and you do not see farms, they have to be on pocket resources. That read by Recon was critical. It set Avali so far back. His food income is practically nothing. 100 food a minute. Look at the idle villager count. This game is done. Half of his economy are not working. They're on a coffee break to rival the English. Even when you look at trade, that's the other thing, right? Like, how much of this eco count is actual trade? And then, like, well, how many of them are dead versus actually ever returning with the goodies? Feels like only 2 or 3 have slipped for in the last minute and a half. Siege Workshop on the front line. Keeps soon to be complete. Only 4 villagers committed to it because from Recon's perspective, he doesn't need a castle immediately. What he needs is the extra resources to go towards the Imperial Age, which I think he's about to kick up to in just a matter of moments. There it is, Wingard Palace on the way in the back of the base. I would not be surprised if Avali calls GG the moment he sees it. Players seem to be in whole agreement that the English in the late game are a little bit too hard to keep up with. And when you're playing a whole age behind, you'll feel like it's not even worth the effort anymore. Remember, folks, this wouldn't be over, though. Avali did take game 1, so Recon, although likely to draw this out, will need to win the 3rd map as well. Avali, he's like, I'm not done yet. Does his best Black Clover impression. He's going to need a lucky Clover to get out of this one. Wingard Palace now complete. Avali in a big pickle, in a bind, needs to get out. Tries to rush out to prevent the keep going up. It's going to be tight, though. Knights with a recommitment will block it. But that won't stop Recon from committing to the fight. Heavy hit into his longbow line, but in the meantime, the Mangonels get smashed. This does mean that at the end of the day, Avali's army should be going to 0, and Recon's is going to stand firm. Sure, you block the keep, but it's so healthy, you can just bring out a few new villagers anyway. Something that is not healthy is Avali's eco. 65 food a minute. No way he can reproduce an army fast enough. That should be it. GG gets called.